In this upcoming episode, we want to introduce you to Tony, a former elder and a third-generation Jehovah's Witness. His lived experience offers a powerful look at how growing up in the religion shaped his mental health and why so many others may still be suffering in silence. We're sharing Tony's story in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month because mental health is still a deeply overlooked issue in the Jehovah's Witness community. Too often, emotional struggles are dismissed as signs of spiritual weakness. That's why this conversation is so important. When we first shared it, thousands of people reached out and said, "This is my story too."
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you guys, JT and Lady C, for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I definitely appreciate the work you guys do. I'm third generation Jehovah's Witness. And, as such, it's a lot that has gone on that have really affected me personally from a mental standpoint. And, when I think about mental health, it encompasses a lot, of what goes on in your mind. And so, being in that organization basically all my life, being born into it, you can imagine, the many years of what was put into my mind that, can have an impact and had an impact on a lot of the decisions that I make, my thought processes and things of that nature. Being in an organization, it just pretty much you're giving a way of life from another person's perspective. And so what happens is who you are, your mentality gets distorted. It's a lot of dysfunction that develops as a result of that. Because I know being a part of the organization, you were taught really to be quiet, not speak what's going on, not tell your truth. And so, you hold that stuff in, and what happens is it becomes a problem. It becomes a mental disorder, if you will, over time. Especially growing up in an environment that I grew up in that was already dysfunctional and abusive, adding on to, what the Jehovah's Witnesses teach you, and not just the teaching per se, but just what goes on from a human to human standpoint, was very dysfunctional and very disheartening. And, caused a lot of pain and anguish. And that affects the brain, that affects your decision making. That affects everything that you do on a day-to-day basis. How, even when you're trying to plan something, your mindset is based off of what someone else wanted you to do. Someone else told you to do this or to do that. So it was very important for me to first and foremost be aware of what actually is happening, what is causing this mental dysfunction, and how can I be more aware of what's going on even now, and what things that I can do. We something is not right, and we feel it inside, but because how we're taught, we hold that stuff in. And so when we hold it in, you're not going to be aware of what's going on, and thus you're not going to be able to get the help.
Yeah, very good point. Let me ask you this, Tony, because this is really one of the reasons that we actually wanted to bring you on, is because you had served as an elder, which means you get a look at an aspect of the organization that many people may not. When you served as an elder, what role do you think having unqualified individuals try to handle, as they say, above their pay grade, as it were? What role do you think that plays?
That's a very good point. I think what happens is, instead of the person really getting better, they end up going backwards. They make a situation worse if you're going to get help and you left worse than when you came in. If you're not qualified, what advice are you going to give me? It's almost like the person themselves can say, I can think of this. I can think of a better solution than what you're actually giving me, because you're not really qualified to give me what I'm actually looking for. And in a lot of cases, it's for me, it was really simple. It really just boiled down to having fellow genuine feeling for another person. Like, you don't have to have all of these letters attached to your name. I'm this, I'm that. It's not about what's attached to you. It's just about your connection with that person. And one of the things that I thought is important is just listening. It was too much instructions given, too much, what to do, instead of just hearing the person. And in a lot of cases, that would solve a lot of, at least that would calm down a lot of, emotional stress for the individual, because you were just sitting there to genuinely hear them, not waiting for them to finish to say, well, the Bible says this, and Jehovah feel like this, and blah, 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 because you already know that. You're learning that part when you're going to the meetings. This is something different. This is this human to human relationship that we're talking about. And again, because you have a lack of compassion, you're not able to give that. Professionals are professionals. They're there for a reason. They do the study, and they take many years to learn their craft, learn their profession. So when you come to them, they have a lot to offer you. The elders are just going to offer you either their own opinion or a twisted view of a scripture, or it don't have to be twisted, but they can just show you something that's really not helping you. Bro, I just wanted you to hear me. I just wanted you to understand and say, I feel what you're saying. I understand that, I'm here for you. Just little things like that makes a world of difference. And so what happens on the other end, the person coming to you, they're going to feel worse. They're going to feel like, I cannot get help here, and they are preventing me from getting help somewhere else. So, all of that is just piling up against, the organization, and you're not even close to being qualified because you don't even have compassion yet. So, it's really hurting many millions of people who are really depending, staking their lives on the thoughts and mindsets of these elders, and yet they're not giving them anything that's going to make them walk away smiling, feeling good. Okay, I'm going to try that. This brother was here for me. I appreciate that. That was true love. They're not getting that. They're walking away more confused than when they came in.
Oh yeah. I remember going to elder school, and one of the things, and I think you made a good point, that there are many elders, many men who serve as elders. They really want to try to do the best that they can for the friends. And so what some elders were doing, because they realized they didn't have the qualifications to deal in these, to delve into these areas, a lot of elders started taking classes, reading books, just trying to be a better elder. And I remember point blank at our elder school, we were told there's no need for you to study anything outside the publications. So anybody, because a lot of elders, well, let me give you a copy of some information if you're dealing with this brother, and here's something you might. And once word got back to Brooklyn at the time that elders were going outside the society's publications, at our elder school, that was shut down. So here you had people who were sincere, trying to help, trying to find out things they didn't know, and they realized that the organization didn't provide, and it shut them down. And so the bottom line is, once again, the witness, the average quote unquote rank and file Jehovah's Witness, who is told to go to the elders, he is once again going to somebody who is simply not qualified to deal in this area of mental health.
And that's a good point too, because I'm thinking in terms of how, who are these ones that's telling you to go to the elders? And a lot of times it will be the leaders who are saying, if you have any issues, go to the elders. And then they know that the elders will have to report back to them to say, hey, what to do in this situation. Yeah. So it's a cycle. Like you're really not getting out of it. You stand within that bubble, if you will, and you're really never getting any help. You know what I mean? And like I said, there's so many places to get some help, and it doesn't have to necessarily be somebody saying, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. If you're sick, if you're feeling good, I don't know that you're not feeling good, but you will make your way to the doctor. You're going to make your way to wherever you need to do to get help, right? I don't have to tell you that. So the fact of someone telling you what to do really is a problem in itself, because you're not using your own critical thinking. You're waiting and sitting. Hey, I'm sick here, so what should I do?
No, exactly. You know what I think too? Yeah. That's where this term comes in. What is mental health? Because I think, here's what I think about this whole thing is, when a Jehovah's Witness is experiencing a crisis, do they even know what mental health is? Do they, like you said, Tony, you said they're going to go to the doctor if they're having a physical ailment. But when they're having a mental ailment, do they even know what that looks like?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, like, here's a slide here on the screen. What is mental health? It's being aware of why and how you are reacting to something.
Sure.
So when you think about that term and that sentence there, what comes to your mind when you're talking about Jehovah's Witnesses? You know, when you're thinking about being aware of something and being aware of how you're reacting to something, this happens all the time in the world of a Jehovah's Witness because there's always something to be reacting to. Every time you turn around, somebody's reacting to something that you're not doing, and just you're always being called on the carpet as lacking in something. So you guys want to kind of talk about that, the things that people are being aware of and how they're reacting to something. Do you have anything a good idea of what that could be?
Yeah, I can, when I think back on my childhood and, growing up in the organization, like I said, I was given a script for life, basically. And because for me, my dad was an elder, and he passed in July of this year. And, he was one of a devout, elder. And so he had this, way of, controlling his children and controlling anything around him. So with my life, everything was already laid out for me, who I was going to get married to. The fact that I was an elder, it wasn't something that I reached out for per se, but it was something that his hands was already in it, making and talking to the right people to make sure that his son becomes an elder. So you start to, for me personally, when with all those things already laid out, there's a lot of things I had to figure out, like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling that way? And basically that brings up, that question, like, what is mental health? And so anything that affects your mind, whether it's negative or positive, is you have to see whether it's healthy or unhealthy for you. So for me, it was a very unhealthy thing from a mental standpoint, because there was a lot of reactions that I didn't understand why. And in the organization, you have people who have been abused. And so they have a certain behavior when they grow up because of that abuse. And yet the organization is going to punish them again, not giving them the help that they need, not talking about what's really going on. Why are you feeling? It's all about, we're going to punish you because you just reacted this way, not realizing this is why. What if it's in the home with a Jehovah's Witness who has abused you? So it's within this organization that's causing individuals to act a certain way, and yet you're not really providing the help. Because like I said, it really boils down to that human to human connection. That's what it really boils down to. And if that was distorted in any way, if that was manipulated in any way, if you was abused in any way, if there's dysfunction in it, that's a mental issue there that has to be addressed. And we have to find some way to kind of fix that.
I totally get that, because when you think about just from a standpoint of children and how you're taking them to the Kingdom Hall, and you have a little 2-year-old, and they're sitting there and expected to be at a meeting that's happening at night when most kids are in bed. And then they're being instructed, oh, take them to the bathroom and beat them because they can't sit here and be quiet. And so you're getting this training from a small child all the way up to an adult, and it's really messing with you mentally, because you can't understand why your body is telling you to go to sleep, but somebody is beating you to tell you to stay awake and pay attention to the brother on the platform. So that's a whole situation dealing with the starting of a mental problem happening for this person.
Yeah, it's very important when you think about it. It starts early for a child of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it starts early for a Bible study with an adult. The constant making you feel that you have not done enough or that you are lacking. I mean, I look back to myself growing up. I remember my mom would be like, well, did you read your magazines yet? Have you studied for the meetings yet? Same thing with a Bible study. I remember when the lady would come over, the worst question that would be asked was, did y'all get a chance to read over this before we came? And so there's this constant, you have not done enough. And after a while, when people are constantly told they have not done enough, it begins to take its toll. The person begins to question their own self-worth. And that's why we know this conversation takes place, because we've talked to so many people who have left this organization. And it's interesting, you see this common denominator flowing through almost every conversation, that how they had to deal with, I just couldn't keep up. I just wasn't doing enough. And so like, well, where did that come from? Why is everybody talking about they feel like they didn't do enough? Because that was the culture. The culture was run faster, jump higher, jump higher. Right. And it definitely impacts people's mental health, especially when you combine all of this stuff with one little caveat. You're not doing it for God. You're not doing it for God. You're not doing enough for God. And so when you think that you haven't done enough for God, man, that'll just wear people out. That'll wear people out. Absolutely.
You know, I was as you were talking, I was just thinking about, because you made it's two groups. You know, you're either born into it, or you know, they come and knock on your door and bring you into it. And for me, growing up into it, that's a normal way of life to you. You have no idea what the real life is. So when I say that, from an emotional standpoint, you don't know how to connect with people, because you're not taught that. You're taught to skip over the relationship that you're supposed to have between mother and father, you know, daughter and mother, brother and sister. It's all about God. As long as you love God, you're good. So it's very difficult, especially when you were born in, because like I said, you don't have a choice. It's not like, okay, you can be in Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, or Mormon. Like, which one you want? You know, study all three of these and then tell me which. You can't do that. So all of the teachings, all of the feelings, all of your emotions, everything that's talked about is actually put into you. You don't get to choose. Hey, this don't feel good to me. I want to go a different direction. No, this is what you have to do. It's just as simple as that. And so it becomes a strain, you know, and that's why I keep bringing up the fact, you know, that the mental thing is it incorporates every single part of your life, your thought process, what you feel about this and feel about that. You know, even when it comes to getting married, like, what are your thoughts about this other person? Are you ready? Do you know yourself enough? You know what I mean? Do they know themselves? So you're joining people at an early age, and they like, I don't know nothing about this person. I don't know nothing about me. You know, why am I going to, you know? And so again, it's the whole thing. Your whole mind is a secondary person. It's not who you truly are. Only when you making your decisions, when you're faced with things you like, things you feel, is when you're going to be able to do that. Not, this is what you need to be doing. About how old are you? Say, oh, you need to be getting into the water. You know, how old are you? 20. You should be a ministerial servant. How old? Okay, you should be elder by now. So, you know, all of those things that they mapped it out for you. That means they've taken away your mind. You did not say, hey, this is a good move for me. You know what I mean? Because most of the stuff that you're doing it because you're scared, or, you know, you're going to be shamed if you don't, or, you know, you just, this is just your way of life. You don't know. So you're really not given any choices. You're really not being able to make up your own mind. So that kind of thing really creates these disorders. And people don't understand that. But that, like you said, when you're younger and that's all you was filled with, man, you got some real issues there. Right. You know, and you went through I went through the ranks of all of these things. Everything I've been through was always like, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. And I'm like, what's going? I have brothers knocking on the door, ready to go over questions with me. And I'm like, for what? Like, there's no dedication being made. Why are you here answering questions? Oh, to test my knowledge, just to see how much I know, and that gets me in. Now I can get in the water. I don't even want to do that. Yeah. So, you know, when you're...
Oh, that's right, because you said your dad just sent the brothers over and told you that you're going to be going over these questions for baptism, and you didn't know what that was.
I had no idea. So it's...
that was so crazy.
Right, so things like that will make you, like, eventually, and I'm 13 years old. I'm 13. Like, I don't know nothing about nothing. And then being sheltered, I haven't been out here to experience anything. and then you're sheltered, and now you're in this contracted agreement, if you will, and you have no idea why.
Yeah.
Why am I? What am I doing? So
Yeah.
my life, starting from a kid, getting baptized, getting married, because my dad prearranged the marriage. Everything was already done for me. So that has a great effect on your mental stability.
Yeah.
You can't make these decisions. Nothing that your heart was involved in led to these decisions. It was everything that was told to you. That really puts a strain on you mentally. So if you're not aware of that, you're just going to go along with it. So mental awareness, just being aware of what's going on. Why am I doing this? What's the reason for that? And you have to ask these questions. But because of the organization, you're not allowed to even ask them. So you're going to be stuck in that world. You feel like what you're going. I thought everybody went through what I was going through. This is a normal way. So if you're being abused at home, you say, "Oh, my next door neighbor got to be going. We the same age. That's my buddy. I know he going through the same thing. Let me ask him. Did you get a beating last night like me?" Because your mindset was everybody is going through the same thing. When I had brothers going over questions, people my age, everybody was going through that same thing. So you thought this was the way you're supposed to do. And that, again, that's what people, especially in the organization, you have to understand that, you have to ask yourself those questions. You know what I mean? Is this normal? Is everybody doing this? And so that's the awareness that we keep, trying to highlight.
Yeah.
And you have to get to that, but you have to ask those questions, because you will never know why you're reacting the way that you're reacting as an adult.
Yeah, because I've talked to people who actually think that they had a problem. They felt like because they didn't agree with the teachings and they didn't think that it made any sense, they thought they did something wrong. So that when they finally left the religion and got this fellowship, they really shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with. But because they thought that it was normal what they were going through, they thought that they needed to come back to the organization at some point, And so it's different things. And then some people actually wake up after they get this fellowship, trying to come back.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different areas that people find themselves in when it comes to this mental health. But until they actually go out on the internet and begin to research to find out what they were in, do they actually find out that they were being abused spiritually?
Yes. That's a very good point.
I think that when we talk about mental health awareness, or just the word mental health, I think people may say, I don't have no mental illness. I don't have no mental issues. When we're really not talking about it in that way, but we're really talking about it that there could be people that could be suffering mentally, but could be 100% sane.
Sure.
It's just that the mental stress and strain that you have. Like, for instance, I think this website called Better Up, or this organization, talked about taking a mental stress day. It talked about how people, they'll call in sick and they'll say, I'm not feeling good today, so I'm calling in sick. But then you also heard the term, I got to take a mental health day. And they were saying that even though they call in sick, they give their employer the impression that they're really physically sick when they're mentally sick.
Right.
And so they said, why don't you just be honest and just tell them that you're taking a mental health day, because it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is I would like you and JT to answer a question.
Okay.
So we talked about the mental stress day for our job. Now, both of you were elders. Do you think you'd be able to get away with telling the brothers in the congregation on the elder body that you wanted to skip out of the theocratic school of service meeting because you got a mental health crisis, or you're taking a mental stress break?
That's a good question. Individually, you may have an elder who may say, I know what you're saying, I understand. But organizationally, the answer is no. And the reason why is very simple. It is because of the definition that, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we were taught is the reason that you're having whatever problem you're having. We were always taught that it is a reflection that you are spiritually weak. That's it. It's always a reflection that you are spiritually weak. And that's the reason, the solution that elders and circuit overseers and the organization has historically given to every Jehovah's Witness for decades is that you need to check your spirituality. And that is where we discuss about being qualified to diagnose people. Elders are not able to do that. And so the poor witness has been told he's part of the happiest people on earth. He's been told that he's spiritually weak. He's failing in some way. One of the things when I was growing up as a kid, they don't use it much now, but they used to use this all the time. They would tell the friends, "Are you doing something that's grieving the spirit? Are you doing something that's grieving the spirit, brother?" And so once again, at the end of the day, it always kicks back on the witness. At all times, you will be blamed. A witness could never tell somebody, brother, I just don't feel like coming to meeting tonight, because the problem can't be the meetings. See, that's what gets all of us. Every single one of us, that's what we just got swallowed in, because we never could say, well, maybe it's something about the organization, but you never could do that. And that's why we couldn't go to therapists, because I'm going to tell you, a good therapist will make you walk through your daily life. And if you are a good Jehovah's Witness, everything in your daily life revolves around the organization. So if you're talking to a therapist and she asks you to list the 10, 15 things that you have to do, and 14 come up to be something related to the watchtower, they're like, well, you're doing it every day. And so it becomes quick to diagnose. We know where your problem's at. If someone is eating sugar every day, you eat cake for breakfast, cake for lunch, cake for dinner, the doctor's going to figure out what you've been eating that cake every day. And so it ain't going to take that long to figure that out. And so the same in the organization. A good Jehovah's Witness literally feeds on a constant diet of watchtower. I mean, every conversation, every discussion, every thought, and so it takes this impact. So no, an elder would generally not be able to tell another body of elders. In fact, if you were to do that in many congregations, they would probably be meeting to discuss, I think, we might need to sit the brother down. He's having some problems. And so this is what makes this video so important, because people need to understand this is the type of conversation that goes on in the back room about other witnesses. And so if you are an elder and you're seeing y'all guys are back there discussing 4 or 5 friends who are struggling emotionally, you're not going to come up and tell these guys, I'm feeling the same way too. No.
Now, Tony, your answer. What do you feel? Do you think you'd be able to tell the brothers, I'm going to need to take a mental health day today?
I agree with JT. I think that there's some well-meaning, but that brother's going to pull you. He's going to pull you to the side. He would never even say that in front of the other brothers. So, because the way the organization works is that they are giving the elders their mindset. And so, again, their solution to your mental health is going to be, well, you're not reading the Bible enough. We're looking at your published records going, you haven't been out, you're not doing the average. So everything is going to have to be geared towards what their requirements are in order for you to get better. So no, that would definitely not go across well.
Okay, now, given the fact that we're talking about your volunteers, like if you work for the Red Cross and you were not feeling good and they're having a meeting and all that kind of stuff, and you say, I'm just not feeling good today, I'm gonna, take off. I know this is a volunteer role that I have. Do you really feel like you're volunteers in the Jehovah's Witnesses, or do you feel like this is a job?
It was a job. It was a requirement. It wasn't a volunteer. We said it was volunteering, but it was really, we view it as a requirement.
So for me, because the whole thing for me was forced upon me, and it wasn't my decision to do anything, it's not going to be, I'm volunteering for something that I wasn't signing up for in the beginning. No, when you volunteer, this is something from your own heart, not something somebody's going to make you do, coerce you to do it, and there's a penalty if you don't do it. That's not no one wants to volunteer for something like that. That's not even how you define somebody volunteering. Absolutely not.
When it comes to mental health, what type of crises do you think that people could see themselves in as a Jehovah's Witness, but not realize it's a crisis.
I think people can be impacted by their health and not recognize it. We've seen people who their health has given out on them, and they didn't even realize what it was. And their kicker was they kept trying to do more watchtower stuff when they really needed to pause, but they just kept trying, and it just would just grind them. I mean, we've seen people physically just lose it because of their mental health.
For me, this is very, very touchy and sensitive because, like I said, I just lost my father in July, and I'm still struggling with this because I really feel in a large way he was stressed out. And even more recently, there's been a few Jehovah's Witnesses who have passed, elders, young elders, who would, to the eye seem physically sound, if you will, but because of stress, they've passed on. And it's really disheartening. Because people really don't know that, what this stuff leads to. And you just don't know because you're not aware of, again, the mental health issue. And so my father he was taken out. They gave him 6 months because he had cancer, and it only took him 6 days, and he was just gone. And I know, he's been an elder for many, many years, but I know personally that, he was under a lot of stress, and there was a lot of mistreatment going on toward the end of his life. But, I really believe that, they cause people to have these situations, that can sometimes lead to death. So.
That's a good point. In fact, that is probably one of the main reasons right now that the organization is struggling getting younger men to reach out for position. And that's because they've seen their fathers and their grandfathers, in some cases, great grandfathers, literally get just ground down to, just a powder by the organization. And so they're like, I don't want to be no elder. Y'all kill folks trying to do that stuff. Yeah. And so a lot of young people, they're like, they've seen by example what it did to their fathers. And so they're like, no thanks. I'll take a pass.
So I understand that, there are people who look at the situations of people in their family who have passed away because of that. The good thing about that is that they're being made aware. So, when they see things that's happening, that's the beginning of it. That's the start of being made aware of this mental health thing, because, it affected your loved one. So now you got to ask yourself, how is it affecting me? Am I being affected by it? Is it something that I'm missing, something that I don't know? And like we said earlier, you're looking at your character. You're looking at how you're reacting to things. So now you got to start being aware of you. Why are you doing these things? What is causing that? And that's, again, being made aware of what's going on. That's going to be the beginning stages of getting that help.
Yeah, and I don't know if you all realize this, but according to the National Institute of Mental Health in the United States, these are the statistics for the United States, nearly 1 in 5 adults have a mental illness or mental health condition. That's 52 million people.
Oh yeah. The numbers are probably low. The numbers are probably a little bit higher because it's a stigma that comes with this. I mean, just in society in general, there's a stigma. So people generally would not report that. People realize that they put it on their application on some jobs. They may question your stability. So a lot of these numbers may not always be reflecting the entirety. But and we've had this conversation before. Anecdotal stuff you can argue back and forth. But just being, just looking from a personal perspective and talking to other elders who actually see their friends, there is a lot of witnesses who are supposed to be the happiest people on the earth who are struggling with this. There is literally a lot of witnesses who are struggling with this, and because they can't come out, especially historically, they're not getting any real help. They're not getting any real help.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, when I think about this too, I think about what is the carbon monoxide or whatever, where it's like odorless, tasteless. It's almost similar to that, where people are just not aware, but it's taking its toll on you. You stay in that environment long enough, and it'll kill you. And it's just like that. They just not aware because the organization they're not transparent to say, this is what we're doing to you. They're not going to admit these things that's happening to you. They're not going to admit their involvement in a lot of this stuff. And especially with the children, if you grow up in a witness family and you have an elder who has had many years of being an elder with what the watchtower was teaching them, that child is going to have some sort of mental issues there. I don't care who you are, you're going to have that. It's just, it is what it is. So, they're unaware of that. To them, this is a normal life, but really it's just like that carbon monoxide. Like, you just don't see it, but it's killing you.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, as we're trying to educate people in this video, then we now want to talk about, what is depression? So my whole goal is for people that when we're talking about things in the video, Google it. Google the top 10 signs of depression, or the top, reasons why people get depressed, because you could be depressed and not realize it, And so these are some things that you need to take a look at. I do know that in the mental health arena, there's something called what short and long-term depression, because like some people may have a situational depression, right? Their depression may just be for 2 weeks because they're undergoing something on their job and they're stressful, and they're all stressed out until they find out the outcome of something at work. And they may be undergoing depression because of that. All of a sudden, things turn out in their favor, and now they're done with that situation. They're not depressed anymore. But then you may have people that's experiencing a long-term depression. And if that's the case, they're going to need to address that. They're going to need to find out what's causing the depression and how they can treat it. If you're experiencing depression and your depression is lasting longer than it really needs to, that's the time that you need to determine, hey, look, do I need to seek a therapist? What do you all think about therapy? Tony, I know you and I have talked about this before. You want to give us your take on what you think about therapy?
Sure. I had started having panic attacks, because everything was coming at me at one time. I had lost a couple of jobs. I was divorced. I was alone. Nobody was, really there from, like, it was a lot that I was going through emotionally. So I kind of, what they call, hit a bottom. And it's almost like when you hit a bottom, you have nowhere to go but up. So you kind of, sometimes it kind of forces you to reach out for help. And so that was the case for me. I had to, I ended up going to patients first, and it led to me going to see a therapist. So I had to hit a bottom, if you will, to say, you know what, it's time for me. I got to see somebody, or else my next step is suicide. And I know a lot of people just need to talk initially before they get into further, advanced, help for them. But, for me, it really worked out well. I think for me, that was like the first step, get into therapy. And then it led me to a program that I got involved in, which got more into detail about, me personally and the day-to-day things that help me, from a cognitive perspective, and then from a dynamic perspective, dealing with the subconscious.
All right, JT, what do you think about therapy?
I think therapy is good. Sometimes you just need someone to talk to. But I think we also have to be very, very, very realistic. Okay. Sometimes living in the West, we forget people who live in other parts of the world. It's just what we do in the West. When you're not going through something, you don't think about other people sometimes. But sometimes you got to stop and think about other people, because everybody's circumstance is not like yours. Here in the West, we just flash our little Blue Cross Blue Shield and just go and see who we want to see, talk to the therapist, okay? When you consider that Jehovah's Witnesses as a religious group represent, unfortunately, some of the individuals who are struggling the most financially, for them going to see a therapist, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And this is what makes this whole religion so dangerous. This religion has taken good people, sincere people, And because of their financial circumstances that they may be dealing with in their countries, Watchtower got boots on the ground over 200 countries. And many of these countries are very poor. And so they may not be able to have the convenience of going down to see a therapist or calling up a therapist or doing a Zoom with a therapist. And so what about these people? What about these people? And this is what makes this religion so dangerous. I mean, I've said this before, the Watchtower be jacking with folks' lives. And so those are the people that we often think about when it comes to so many things. What about our brothers and sisters who find themselves in those? Well, I guess the good news is today we do have something that we didn't have years ago, and that is the internet. More and more, at least more people can use the internet and get access to some information that simply wasn't available for our parents, grandparents, and they can do it electronically. So whatever you're able to do in terms of getting some type of third person, as it were, to listen to read about, to read what their advice may be, take advantage of it. Take advantage of it, because realistically, every Jehovah's Witness around the world who may need someone to talk to is not going to be in that situation financially. But yet, take advantage of the tools you do have. As I've always said, we've always mentioned here on Critical Thinkers, the internet is a game changer. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it.
Yes, and I do agree with both of you. And I feel like exactly what you said, JT, about being online, because a lot of people don't realize how many resources you can access online. And I know how when we're out here every day looking at Jehovah's Witnesses, pointing people to jw.org as the only solution. Well, you could go to any Google search will bring back results, because, the stuff that we're talking about today, we Googled this information about how many people in the United States have mental illness or experiencing a mental crisis. So we Googled that. And just like we Googled that information, you can Google it too. You can Google, why am I so sad? What is depression? What is PTSD? Even when it comes to dealing with grief. Now, we're not going to talk about that in this video. That'll be a future video. But think about this. The 5 stages of grief. If you Google that, you're going to get a response. Now, the only reason why I'm bringing it up now is because Jehovah's Witnesses, they experience grief when they're disfellowshipped, because it's like they're being cut off and they're no longer alive. They're like dead to their family and their friends. So that's another video that we're going to be doing next. That's going to be one of our next videos that we're going to be presenting. And we're going to be talking to people that we went into the community, and we talked to a number of people, and they're talking about the grief that they're experiencing after leaving this religion. So there's a whole lot that you can pay attention to, that you can make yourself aware of in the world that we live in. And as a Jehovah's Witness, I'm encouraging you to take the lid off the box, step outside, do your research, learn more about your options and choices, because everything that you do in your life doesn't have to be all about the Watchtower.
So the objective that we want everyone to understand is very simple. Seek out help. One of the things that we found in doing this channel is just how many people we've interviewed over the years, talked to over the years. And as mentioned before, sometimes you just need somebody to talk to. And that's really the problem in the organization. You cannot just talk to anyone and tell them exactly what you feel, what you think, without them judging you. Well, if you're able to get the help of a therapist, that's not going to happen. They're going to listen to what you have to say and offer you various things that you can consider, and then you can decide what route you want to take. But your mental health is the most important thing, because if you don't address your mental health, eventually, sad to say, it will start to impact your physical health. So take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. And whatever we can do with these videos and causing people to pause and give a second thought, that's what we want to do. Because this is probably the biggest challenge that any Jehovah's Witness will face, is what is going on in your mind. We'd like to thank everyone who was in the audience today. We encourage you, hit the like button, subscribe, and be sure to share this information with someone that you know could benefit from this. As they say, sharing is caring. This has been JT, and we'll see you on the next episode.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.